Hello, guess what? It's week 7. I'm a little, oops, I don't think I need my mask behind my ear. Uh, I, I'm struggling because my laptop, I can't log into my laptop. And as I think I told you all, I'm on the road. I look sick because I am. You probably can tell that. So, no makeup, no nothing. Drove from New Orleans to yesterday and today, and I'm in Georgia because that's where I'll spend the winter is in Georgia. But I can't get my laptop to work, so I'm going to do the best I can here, and we'll see what happens. Using YouTube to to video, which isn't normally what I use. I use a system called Screencast-O-Matic. So I'll do the usual, do the housekeeping things, and then talk a little bit about the paper that's due. And this week, remember, you don't have anything due tonight except uh, the two forum posts which I closed yesterday morning, and so you have 3 new ones that are open. And no, I haven't had a chance to look at them yet. I've been at a conference in New Orleans, the National Communication Association. So let's talk about what's happening. I can't share screen because I'm doing this on my iPad, and I can't share screen. And I noticed that I did not update with the new updated schedule on the actual As You Learn page. So I'm in a hotel, if you can't tell from behind me. I'm going to go down and see if I can't do that from their computer downstairs and fix that. But if not, that new updated schedule is it's in the announcement from last week, and on mine it's the announcement that said this is crucial to watch, and posted on November 13th. So if you need to see that again, please go there. What we have this week is you have 2 forum posts, and then you have paper number 3, the audience analysis, and I'm not done with paper number 2 yet. I'm getting there. So the conference and my not being well, I've taken, it's not COVID. I've tested every day, and it's not COVID, but it is definitely a cold or a sinus infection. So anyway, so that's what we're talking about this week, audience analysis, and that's what Chapter 7 is about, is audience analysis. And we'll talk about the actual assignment for this week also. Let me open that. I've got 2 iPads here. I'm scrolling through one and doing the other. Okay. And I've not done the test yet either, so, but I'm sure you knew that, or else you'd be seeing those. So, paper number 3, audience analysis. I can't screen share, I'm sorry. And of course, the second iPad is taking forever to load. So, come on. What basically this is going to ask you to do is to you can use the same topic or you can come up with a new topic, but it wants you to look at when you're going to send a persuasive message, you have to analyze the audience. And that's what this paper asks you to do. All right. And again, I didn't ask any of you all to change topics. A few of you have a couple topics that are way overdone, but I didn't say change them. But and you're going to talk about looking at 2 target audiences. I mentioned this last week also. 2 target audiences that you're going to approach to persuade. One, and I'm going to want you to look at the demographics and who they are and how you're going to get them to identify with you. And it's pretty. The assignment sheet is pretty clear. I list the 6 things that I'm looking for. And then I'm going to want you to refer back to what you said in your credibility papers. Now, y'all have your credibility papers, you just don't have them graded yet. And I'm hoping to get those done in the next day or 2. So you'll have them before the paper is due at the end of the weekend. So But you're going to look at the common centers, which we'll talk about some here, and when I talk about the chapter, and looking for a homogeneous or homogeneous, some people say, audience, meaning what are the like characteristics. When something's homogeneous or homogeneous, it means there are like characteristics. What makes them similar to each other, and then any ethical issues that might come up. All right. And, and then when you look at it, you'll see that I relisted what I asked you to do in the credibility papers. This is all ringing a bell because we talked about it last week also, I know. So, the due date on it is the 27th, not the 20th, as talked about in last week's This Week in Persuasion. I keep on wanting to call it Watch Me. So, sorry. Anyway, so those are the housekeeping things, and your papers are there, and everything else that you probably need is there. Now, Chapter 7, which is this week's chapter, is about persuasion and audiences and social learning. Now, we've talked about the social learning theory before. Those of you that were in communication theory with me, and I have mentioned it in here before as well. So you're going to talk about things like your primary audiences and your secondary audiences, because it isn't just the main audience that you're talking to, that primary audience. There will be secondary audiences also. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to the fact that there might be more than one audience or another. So I'm looking at myself in the screen. It's like, oh my God, I've got no makeup on. It's all right. You get to see me sans makeup. So, that idea of social learning that we talked about in Bandura's theories about this is, the idea of the latitude of acceptance and the latitude of rejection, and how do you get people who are rejecting what you have to say to accept it, and the people that are in that latitude of non-commitment. So, you basically pay attention to what the audience is thinking about, and what they think about the topic that you're trying to sell them on. So, when you do that, all right, you begin with demographics, all right, and that's, the age and the sex and the political leanings, and, could be anything that has to do with who they are demographically, religion, any of those things, maybe the media outlets that they use. With all this stuff in the news about Twitter, for example, how many people use Twitter? I don't. So I had an account, but I don't anymore. I never used it. So it was like, well, why do I have that? I don't anymore. So your audience, of course, is the main object of what you're trying to persuade. So here's the thing about this, right? You can have thoughts and opinions and beliefs and all sorts of things that you think about, and you all wrote about them in your first papers, all right? But you wrote about how you think, which was great. That's what I asked for, all right? Now, how do you take that and get that out to an audience? And that's the issue where it becomes, a sticky wicket, as we call it. It's like, this is what I believe, because there were some things that some of you all said that were like, I'd be careful about going about it that way if you're going to take that to an audience. Because you don't want to turn the audience off to listening to you if you're trying to persuade them, right? And some audiences are going to want you to be more upfront, and some audiences are going to want you to be more a little bit more covert about what you're trying to do. Not to the point of manipulation, because when they discover that you're trying to manipulate them, then you will lose them. So, Anyway, so just start thinking in terms of, if I'm going to persuade somebody, how do I go about looking at them so I do the best job that I can do? Okay? So that's the bottom line there. You want to think in terms of different routes you will go, routes, whatever you want to say it. Are you going to use media? Are you going to use social media? What ways will you get your message out there? Which I ask you to do for the paper too. How are you going to get to it? And some of you all, in the first papers when we were looking at that, it's kind of like, well, I'll use social media. It's like, no, you got to think in more depth than that, folks. It doesn't do you any good to say, okay, I'll use social media. No, you got to think deeper than that. Here's how I will use social media. Here's what I would say on Twitter or whatever medium I decide to use. All right? And then, of course, pay attention to what the challenges are of using digital and social media for your audiences, and especially for using that only. Sorry, and that hurts. I lost train of thought there. There's a whole section in the chapter. Sorry. Drink a little water, see if that'll help. About how you go about finding that information. They talk about data mining and the ability to be able to get your information and how do you put that together. If you're going to look at an audience, they talk about a conversion graph in the chapter, and so if you're going to look at the audience, all right, can you graph that out? All right. Can you look and see, well, these people are more likely to be persuaded by my argument than someone who is not. So, and one of the biggest issues, which you saw when I was just going, or heard, because I can't see them today, the common center. What brings that audience together is what the common center deals with. All right, we have a lot of individualism and a lot of diversity in our culture, but is there a common center to the audience that you're talking to or want to talk to? In the case of the papers, of course, we're talking about an audience that you would want to talk to. The whole idea with the target audience is that when you target them, if you know what the common center is, if y'all have ever shot archery or gun practice, with the target, what are you aiming for? The center, all right? Well, that's the same thing with the audience. You want to find that common center and aim for that with your arguments, all right? And you will be more persuasive. I don't have a stand. But here's what happens when I do the stand. You see my eyes on. So I got to hold it up. So watch that target and that common center that becomes important. The idea of getting the audience to identify with you, we talked about that in some earlier chapters, but identification becomes extremely important with audiences. Here is how I will get them to identify with me as the speaker. And as a person with ideas that they will be willing to listen to. All right, so that concept of identification is extremely important. And they can identify with you ideologically or demographically, circumstantially, all different types of things. A lot of people say, oh, you can walk in their shoes. Nobody can ever walk in your shoes. They can try to identify with what it's like to walk in your shoes, but they can never actually walk in your shoes. And we do all kinds of things to get the audience to identify with us. We do things like, we dress a certain way so that they'll identify with us. We do a more dynamic delivery because we know that they will identify with that delivery. Any of the examples we use, that narrative that we talked about in comm theory, the whole narrative paradigm. So there are lots of different things that we can do to get them to identify with us. Another thing about identification that we do, especially that helps them identify with you more, is the concept of what is commonplace between you and those in the audience. Because the commonplaces will also get them to identify with you better. Basically you want them to say, oh, okay, well, this isn't that new. This is a little bit new, but this isn't that new to me. So I can get them to identify with me. So you want to pay attention to audience-specific norms. In other words, when you look at that audience, what are the norms of the audience? So let's say you look at a college age group. What are the norms of that group? Let's say you look at a group of older, political identification group. It could be, Democrat, Republican, independent, whatever. What are the norms of that group? Because when you pay attention to the norms, you'll be able to be more successful with your message. So this all becomes part of the analyzation of the audience. All right, and so you have basically two types of norms. One is descriptive, and the other is injunctive, and those are talked about in the textbook in the chapter. But the descriptive, of course, are the ones that describe what you're thinking, your attitudes, your beliefs, your behaviors, those kinds of things. And then injunctive it ties in the judgment to it, approval or disapproval. So I know I'm looking over to the side because that's where the other iPad is with my notes on it. Usually they're on the desk in front of me. The basic way that you can find out, by the way, about an audience norms is in your pre-research. You need to ask some people who are a member of that same type of audience, what the norms are for that. You just do your best when you're analyzing an audience, because unless you can walk up to every single person and ask them, what are your norms? You're never going to be able to do it. So it's a guessing game, basically. But you want to make the best possible guess that you can. So, don't assume too much. When you talk about, back to when we were talking about being an advocate, if you're going to advocate for something, all right, and there has to be an audience that you're going to advocate in front of or to or whatever, all right, then you have to have a message, all right, and when you have that message, there has to be an audience, so you have to pay attention to the audience, all right. And so what happens is you have to believe what you're talking about. If you want that audience to believe what you're talking about or to do what you want them to do, whatever, all right, you have to firmly believe and send that message. All right, and that becomes the important aspect there of your belief in what you're talking about. So, and then what comes in, of course, is the whole aspect of credibility. All right, well, that high credibility, low agreement. How do you approach them? What if you have low credibility but high agreement with what you're talking about? What do you do there? All right, so there's a whole good section in the textbook about when you have those sorts of approaches, what are you going to do? All right, how credible are you on the topic that you want to talk about? All right, and how do you get people to do that? Now, the aspect of adaptation and audience adaptation, textbook refers to it as, are there limits to adaptation? Sure, there are. You don't want to compromise what your beliefs are and your feelings are, but you do want to think in terms of how can I make this more palatable for my audience, right? And so you don't want to do things like pander to the audience's beliefs. You still keep your position, but you take into account what they think, right? Being concerned with what others think does not preclude your own interests, as I say in the PowerPoint. All right, I know, I'm sorry. It's because I'm hanging on and I keep getting my thumb in front of it. So, and then you have to keep in terms, When does it become unethical? And that's a line that you have to think about. You know, when you cross it, if you're saying and doing things that are not truthful for you, then have you crossed the ethical line? Have you become unethical? All right, and so that is something that you have to concern yourself with. So that's chapter 7. And you know, in short detail, that you know, you have the textbook, you've got the narrated PowerPoint, and you've got the PowerPoint. So you've got all of that. So if you have more questions about that, just let me know. I will be in the Zoom room on Wednesday at noon. I'm not in another time zone. Somebody came last time. I was like, oh my goodness, I forgot. I didn't forget completely. I was thinking it was noon. So, so I was like, oh no. So, and I was on the highway, as I had said I would be. So, but I had changed time zones. I was in the central time zone. So my phone sends me the message when I have 10 minutes before an event. So I apologized. It was Chris that was looking for me. I was like, sorry, Chris. I had my phone on the wrong time zone. Well, I didn't put it on there. When you cross the time zone, it changes itself. So, but I will be in the Zoom room at noon on Wednesday, and I'm going to start working on your papers. Maybe not tonight. I'm not feeling my best if you haven't caught on. I will, if I don't get that fixed tonight, because I didn't take the new updated schedule and replace the old one with it. And so, but it is there. It's in the announcements. So, and I'll put that in the announcement when I get this. I can't get into my laptop. It's a Microsoft, and it won't let me in. It says my password is wrong. Then I go change the password. Then it tells me it won't hook into the Wi-Fi. I can hook into the Wi-Fi here. Why can't I hook into the Wi-Fi on my laptop? So it's crazy. Anyway, I hope everybody has a good week. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. And when I get to my sister's house, which is where I'm headed from here, I will start posting the test as I had promised, that I would do a little bit at a time, so you don't get it all slammed on you there at the last week of classes. So I just haven't had a chance. I was going to do it tonight, but clearly I can't do it because of the laptop not working. So, but my sister has a computer, and I will use hers. So, everybody have a great Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. I'll be in the Zoom room at noon on Wednesday, and if you need anything, just holler. Bye.